This podcast is proud to be part of the Blueberry Network. That's blueberrywithnoease.com.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire, and you're listening to Transpersonal Radio with Angela Lynn Gibson. Remember, your thoughts upload your reality. Think wisely and always prepare to ignite.
Welcome to Transpersonal Radio.
TranspersonalRadio.com. Real talk
For real life.
Inspiring podcasts.
Exploring personal empowerment and
Transformation.
through parapsychology, spirituality, and how your thoughts upload your reality. And now your host, Angela
L. Gibson.
Hello, Transpersonal Radio listeners. I am so excited to have the guest that we have tonight. I can't wait to get to that. Before I start introducing our guest, I want to remind you to please make sure that you download our iPhone app or Android app. Make sure you're getting constant updates to the show so you're not missing out on anything. And please share Transpersonal Radio with your friends, with your family, with whomever you think might be interested in what we have to offer here, because we have a lot of outstanding guests that take time out of their evening to spend time, share their stories, share their expertise, and just let us know what's going on in the world of the paranormal, in the world of UFOs and alien contacts. And speaking of that, tonight we have a very special guest with us this evening. She's going to share with us her knowledge and experiences with extraterrestrial phenomena. Clinical hypnotherapist Laurie McDonald, owner of True You Hypnotherapy, is the founder and organizer of the Sacramento Alien Abduction and Contactee Support Group. She is a graduate of the Alchemical Hypnotherapy Institute of Sacramento and was a teacher's assistant at the Alchemical Hypnotherapy Institute of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Laurie is a graduate of the Dale Carnegie Effective Speaking and Human Relations courses, is a member of the Sacramento Institute of Noetic Sciences, and is on the mental health referral list for organizations such as OPUS, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, and MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. She has recently accepted an offer as a consultant to the research committee of the Edgar Mitchell Foundation and was a team member on the television series Xperiencers. Laurie is an ACHE accredited hypnotherapist. She has been certified as a clinical hypnotherapist since 1995. Her life's passion has been working with alien contactee experiencers, helping them gain a better understanding of their experiences and learning how to navigate the changes that alien contact has created in their lives. She teaches life skills for self-actualization and conducts personal empowerment workshops. True You Hypnotherapy has been a 3-time winner of the Sacramento's Best of Award for hypnotherapy services. In 2015, Laurie gave a presentation on the extraterrestrial phenomena at UFOCon in Sacramento, California. In that presentation, Laurie explained that if you have ever experienced face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact with an extraterrestrial, know that you are not alone. Laurie has shared intimate, actual first-hand experiences of abductees and contactees, and she says when you or someone you love has had an ET experience, reality is altered, consciousness expands, and lives are changed forever. Laurie, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
You have an extensive resume and you have so many things going on. I just want to say I really appreciate you taking time. I know you're so busy. You are involved in MUFON, which is now, tell me that's changed now. It's no longer MUFON in your area.
Well, no, I'm up in more Northern California. Mm-hmm. One of the chapters in Southern California is now OPUS. So they have blended ufology with paranormal sightings and so forth.
Outstanding. And you are a member of the Sacramento Institute of Noetic Sciences. You're also on the health referral list for OPUS, which is so important. And you've just become a consultant, and this is going towards scientific research for the Edgar Mitchell Foundation. Fantastic.
That's correct. I'm also now on the board of directors for OPUS, and I'm on the mental health referral list for free. And with MUFON, that's an amazing referral list. There's only 27 of us on it in the United States that are on the MUFON referral list for extraterrestrial regression work. So it's an honor to be on that list.
That is an honor. That is absolutely an honor. And we're going to get into this a little bit later, but just for the audience who may not know, when we're talking about Edgar Mitchell's FREE, that is the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. Now, one of the things that I find really interesting that I've been ruminating on quite a bit is, in your experience now you've studied thousands of cases in UFO sightings and alien or ET contact. When do you think, Laurie, the shift really started happening from having alien contact or UFO sightings being a fringe event or something that, okay, whatever, to being more widely accepted, more mainstream?
Well, there is a gradual transition into an overall social acceptance of the phenomena, but I think that the change really began when the spiritual aspect of ufology made it a little bit more acceptable. In other countries, ufology and the sightings of UFOs and having relationships with extraterrestrials is rather common. I mean, there are significant differences in geographic location and culture when a witness or an abductee expresses their experience. So we have to kind of understand where they're coming from. If somebody in Norway has an extraterrestrial experience, there's a high probability that it'll be with a Nordic looking extraterrestrial. However, somebody in South America, they have more creature type sightings, chupacabra and so forth, where they're more animalistic. So in the North Americas is where we get the gray sightings. So different. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and you bring up a good point, and that was actually one of my questions that I wanted to kind of dive into, which is, first of all, how a person's already preconceived notions or their filters or their existing experiences, their cultural beliefs, the stories they've heard growing up or what they've been exposed to growing up, sort of influencing or impacting what their experience is like.
Well, it certainly is going to have an influence, but that applies to everything in our lives. So we are products of our environment, and the subconscious mind enjoys repetition, and it's also where it goes to for its first source of information. So if a person has a sighting and they've heard one story, then they're naturally going to relate it to that story. That's human nature. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be part of that. But with this phenomena, I think that there is a real need for people to get the opportunity to express their story from a place that is just their own truth. Mm-hmm. Their emotional reaction and how it happened to them. And I think that because there's that desire and it's creating a larger acceptability. Just more people are taking that chance and discussing their experiences more freely. And other people are going, well, hey, that happened to me or a member of my family or a neighbor down the street. Or one time when we were camping, we all saw a UFO or something like that. So we all have our own experience. So, but with filters, I mean, if a apparition or entity wants to have some type of legitimate communication with a human being, they're going to approach them in what's most acceptable for that. If they're very religious, say Catholic, maybe they'll appear as the Virgin Mary or perhaps even Jesus. Okay,
that's excellent. I'm so glad you brought that up. That is so fascinating. I want to ask your opinion of this because you're hitting on something that I talk about often when I am talking about mediumship, talking about channeling, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a bit as well. However, when I'm talking about connecting with disembodied spirits, connecting with spirits who are in ethereal form or that spirit energy, I often talk a lot about how angel energy or demon energy or alien energy or spirit guide energy or even witch energy we're basically all talking about the same thing. We're talking about the same energy, but we're trying to label it in a way that we understand that particular experience. We're trying to put something into a human vernacular in a way that we can communicate with one another and tell a story, but we're actually talking about the same thing.
Yeah, we are. I mean, because everything is energy. But because all energy is different and has different frequencies, then they're going to resonate or harmonize with likes. So if your intention is to manipulate, and maybe some of the darker energies, maybe some aspects of witchcraft or Satanism or any self-serving type of ritual, then you would attract that type of energy. But then there are those who have experiences that are truly altruistic, loving, and they don't know what type of entity it is. It's because they can't, for one, see it clearly, or two, they can't process that highest vibration, that we're just not capable of doing that in our limited ability of interpreting our environment through our own six senses. But after phenomena and after increasing your own personal vibration, you can move into a more expanded consciousness where your reality is no longer limited and your perception is no longer limited. So you're more up and outside of the body. And I believe that this happens in the gamma brainwave. It's resonating at the highest frequency. And during this time, a human being could have bursts of inspiration. And we know that just means to be in spirit. So, you know, it's all energy. It's all energy. But other entities, sentient and non, know how to manipulate energy. And we have to be very careful. And what we think, our thoughts are extraordinarily powerful.
Yes.
And you know, because of collected consciousness, we're going to get that type of energy. We have to be very careful. You know, the third dimension, that's what it's all about. You know, time is very slow here. We have the opportunity to learn about our thoughts and our emotional energy, our emotions, so that we can have equanimity and balance. But we have to do this from the strongest energy, which is the cardio-electromagnetic energy, which is the heart. It's love.
Yes, absolutely. So now, Laurie, were you always open to paranormal phenomena even as a child? Was this something that was in your world, or is this something that happened later?
Well, apparently it's been a part of my world even in utero. I had found out right around the age of 50 that my birth mother had been subjected to a series of extraterrestrial phenomena in abduction for multiple times through each month of her pregnancy with me.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said, and I've been doing this for decades.
Wow. So now, okay, I want to hear more about this story. I just want to ask a question though, because that's amazing. So when you learned of this at age 50, did you all of a sudden go, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense when this or that happened? You look back on your past, right? And you're thinking, oh, now I understand why this happened. Now I understand why that happened. Was this like an aha moment for you where you just said, okay, now it makes sense?
Well, everything always did make sense to me at a certain age. Right about 30, I had a huge leap in my understanding and growth. And I was really privileged to have had some amazing spiritual experiences that have really forever altered me and allowed me to see things differently. And I felt for people deeply who had these extraterrestrial experiences, or the young women who were saying that eggs were taken from them, or then they were later brought on a ship and saw hybrid children, and sometimes they were repelled, or sometimes they loved them. But sometimes at a later date, they wanted their babies back. But then there were the women that could never talk about their experience, which was my mother. She only told her doctor, and after telling him several times, this is back in 1963, he told her, you just need to shut it down right now and stop talking about it, or we're going to put you in the psych ward.
Yes, I can imagine, especially back then, that was not something that was acceptable to talk about.
Not at all. And so she never talked about it again. And then she saw a TV show that I had done and said, oh, she's got to know the story of her birth, and contacted me and said, hey, she's in Canada and I'm here in the United States. And she said, listen, you should really know this. So it's very funny that I run this support group, for people to give them an opportunity to speak their truth when she had to hold a secret for 50 years.
Wow. So now how fascinating is that, Laurie? Because you were already drawn to this field. You were already helping people in this area. You were running a support group for this very thing. And at that time, you didn't really know your birth story.
Not at all. She didn't raise me.
Oh my goodness. So it was even more of like, wow.
Right. Yeah. She never raised me.
Okay. So now, did she, when she was explaining the alien contact with her while she was pregnant with you, did this have an effect on you directly?
Well, she said that the extraterrestrials that she had her experience with told her that their interest was only in her baby.
Oh my.
Yeah. And so that actually did kind of create a bit of a problem, because I reminded her of these experiences and of this story that if she told, she was going to be, sent away to a psychiatric hospital. Mm-hmm. And since I was a baby that didn't drink the breast milk or cow milk or goat milk, I was difficult apparently. So yeah, it raised, an eyebrow.
Yeah.
But so she contacted me, and I put her on speakerphone, and my husband and I sat down and listened to her story, and she told a good story. And there was a lot of it that I could identify with that I've heard from other experiencers. She said some things that really stand out that really legitimate experiencers speak of. So it was very interesting. Very interesting. So I did ask her at the end, what is your take of this? What do you think is going on? I said, are you telling me that you think I'm a hybrid?
Right.
What's up with that? And well, she, being in her 70s, didn't even know what a hybrid was. And so she wasn't saying anything like that. She was just simply saying that I was special, she thought. And she wasn't really sure herself, I mean, she was afraid to tell her story for a long time. But so what I did do was I put her in touch with the producer of the TV show Experiencers, and I allowed them to talk all summer, and he interviewed her and he talked, and we said, hey, I'm part of FREE, this wonderful organization, and their whole mission is to really, talk to the people, let them speak and gather the information, put it together and find the truth here. And I said, how about, we put my mom on the show and give her her moment. She's been silent for such a long time. Let's let her speak. And he thought it was a great idea, and she agreed to do it. And we were getting ready to go ahead with it. And I got a call from Canada, and she had suffered a brain aneurysm and a stroke. And she was unable to speak. She is, which I thought, no, that was really pushing it at that point. I was like, that's a bit much to take, but these things do happen. And I went to Canada directly, and she survived it, and she's still working with a speech therapist. I totally plan on bringing her to one of the Xperiencers UFO conferences here in Sacramento to give her, 15 minutes on the stage, let her tell her story. Finally get it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
So-
it would be very good.
Now that's what. So since you brought up the television show Experiencers, now there was quite a bit of a kerfuffle around that whole. It's almost like there was intervention all along the way to prevent this from getting out.
Absolutely. The trailer for the TV show Experiencers aired on September the 7th, and I believe 7 nights later, Jim O'Connell, the producer, went to bed healthy with his wife and did not wake up.
Oh my goodness.
And so there was obviously no show at this point. This happened in September. We were really given no explanation. The headlines actually in the Dark Matter News said that it was, Experiencer group leader and TV producer Jim O'Connell mysteriously dies in his sleep.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I know. I mean, it's just every chance she gets to, she did tell me after 50 years, and then, she was going to do the show, then the stroke. And so we're just trying to figure it out. So we'll get an opportunity. And then I just cannot believe that the loss of Jim is huge.
Yes, absolutely.
Huge to the
Absolutely.
community. Yeah, he's very much missed.
Now, Laurie, you are certified for hypnotic regression, for behavioral modification, clinical hypnotherapy, and alien abduction regression. You're actually certified in this. And I can imagine that that's a very particular specialized area, because you have to be able to determine a true event from, say, a mental illness or something else going on. For example, one of the things that I noticed with this, when I talk about near-death experiences and I talk about walk-ins, I give the information about how you tell the difference between a true paranormal experience, such as a walk-in, versus multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder. So we have to look at the mundane first. We have to rule out anything that might be going on as far as a mental illness or something of that nature, and then understand what's really happening. So I'm guessing that it's probably very similar in the field of hypnotherapy. You have to be careful of what is a true experience versus something else going on. Would that be accurate?
It is absolutely accurate. We also want to rule out auditory hallucinations or any of the symptoms of schizophrenia or any type of psychosis. And then we have to establish a protocol so that we can identify what voices somebody's hearing. But, we have to be very careful. How is one to know? Whether it's paranormal, extraterrestrial, celestial, demonic, we're not quite sure. There are other means of getting a voice into somebody's head, psychotronics and radionics, the use of scalar energy. These are absolutely proven ways for mind control. So if a person is schizophrenic, does that even necessarily exclude them?
Right, exactly.
Right, they still can have a legitimate experience.
Right. Well, and we talk about in paranormal circles, we talk about how it's a possibility that the label that they're given with the DSM, now we're the DSM-5, the label we give them as schizophrenic might just actually be the label that we give them. However, they may actually be hearing voices or seeing apparitions in having a true paranormal experience.
They are hearing them, okay, and they are seeing them. They're not making that part up.
Yes.
What we're trying to determine is whether it's delusional,
yes,
or actual.
Correct. Exactly.
It is very difficult. You got to walk a fine line, but there are other ways to tell. You can see in the person's other behavior, so you have to sort of broaden the intake interview. That's for sure. And not every person who's come to me thinking that they've had an extraterrestrial experience has. Some of them have legitimately been schizophrenic. Others have been simply delusional, and others have just misinterpreted lucid dreaming.
Aha, that's a big one. Okay. So that's interesting to me because that was one of my curiosities is sort of how you tell these different situations, little like little telltale signs, and how you were able to say, okay, you definitely have had an experience. You just are a very active lucid dreamer, for example.
Well, in this phenomena, we do have the ability to gather empirical or physical evidence. People have had extraterrestrial implants. They've been removed. They've been sent to a laboratory and analyzed, and it comes back that the implant is indeed extraterrestrial, made of substance not found on our Earth.
Interesting. Okay, so that's great. So that was, thank you for saying that. That was one of my questions as well, was that I've had in general, and so I just want your opinion on it. So here's the thing for me, and every time I talk about UFOs or anything like this, I'm kind of like Fox Mulder. I want to believe. In reality, I happen to be a skeptic in the true sense of the word, meaning I have an open mind and I want to see evidence and I want to learn about it. However, I've always fallen into the camp of, it's more of a government cover-up or government experiments or that kind of thing, right? So with the implants, and now I know you have CT scans that have shown implants and so on. So one of my questions has always been, well, how do you tell it's not just a government experiment or the government is implanting these people? But you're saying that you have materials that have been...
They very well could be.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of that as well.
Yeah. Now the materials, but you're saying that you found some, or you've spoken with people who've had implants, and they are of materials that isn't known.
That's correct.
Okay, fascinating. And so, can you?
OPUS now has a new doctor, a new board of directors, and sorry, I cannot think of his name at the moment. We're both new. And he will be able to do extraterrestrial implant removal. So
nice.
I'm very excited about that. And you see at a lot of these UFO conferences and so forth, they have different scanning methods to see if they can detect one. I'm not sure. I don't know of the legitimacy of that. I can't really speak to that because I'm not sure how they operate.
Sure.
But I have, yes, had people with implants. And there's lots of information out there for the researchers, and it does really indicate that when these implants are trying to be removed, when they're attempting to remove them, the implants respond. They retreat. They move away from the surgical instrument. Now, I have an abductee. He had his first experience at the age of 10. And he is in his 80s, and he began to come to the support group about 3 years ago. I have his CAT scans from UC Davis Medical Center here in Northern California. And there is some type of metallic object in his brain. There's no entry wound. No, we don't know for sure that this particular one is extraterrestrial because it hasn't been able to be removed or examined because of where it is. But he has two others. He said initially there was a bit of a scoop mark behind his knee, and there was one closer up into the fold of his leg near the groin. And over the years, they're moving together, so they're both about mid-thigh right now. And I have filmed them, and I've also photographed them, and I've also touched them and pushed on them to try to get a imprint of their shape on my thumb because they move.
Wow.
And he said that his instincts tell him that when they meet, when they get together and touch, that he feels that that'll be it for him. He will die. So he believes that when these two implants get together, they die. And so with that, he had asked me and given me permission to film his body post-mortem to verify this for him.
Wow, that is fascinating. Now, speaking of that, what has been the most convincing case that you've ever been exposed to? The one that really turned you around and you went, wow, there's something going on here.
I'm going to just say it was my own initial experience that I had decades ago. An extraterrestrial, the face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact
Wow. So, okay, I can't wait to hear this. So, now, how old were you in your teens, early 20s?
No, 29.
29, okay.
And I had been very intrigued with ufology, and I had been doing some investigative work. I had started setting up some cameras on the outskirts of Sacramento here off of Old Highway 16 out in the farm areas because I had seen something. And I wanted to catch what I had seen. I'd seen like an orange orb. But there were other things that were in the sky, so I wanted to know. But one night, after videotaping what could have been a UFO, I don't know for sure, just looks like one, but I can't say definitively. I had gone home, and children were asleep. My husband was asleep. I remember sitting down on the edge of my bed, and then just a kind of a white light bursting into the room, just like seemingly out of thin air. And there were 3 of the small gray extraterrestrials. Now, I'd been doing a little research. I felt that I was psychologically prepared for such an encounter, and I did. And I didn't. Yes, I did.
Well, I'm just thinking, yes, haven't we all been there? We're thinking, oh, we've got this, we're ready for this, and then it happens.
Right, and then it happens. And that was pretty cool. I'm going to say I was totally calm. And I looked at each of them and realized, oh, yes, this is for real. It took me a minute, though, to get to that aspect, because at first I felt like I was a little bit time disoriented. And as I really deliberately focused and controlled my mind, I could clearly see them standing in front of me. And because they didn't communicate with me, and I said something to them, 2 of them kind of barely looked towards each other, and all of a sudden that scared me. Because it's like they weren't ready for me. I think they didn't realize that I had become completely conscious. And that really worried me. I looked down, and when I really had a close look at the hand, got to tell you, freaked me right out. Wasn't expecting that. I don't know why, but because of the shape of the hand, it really threw me. And then instantaneously, just as it all began, a taller gray appeared, became closer to me, and in its hand, about 12 inches long, was almost like the shape of a chopstick. Was a needle, and he came towards me, and I freaked out and pulled my one leg in towards the bed and kicked as hard as I could, and was fully prepared to fight to my death. And I remember nothing after my second kick, just completely. I would say that I blacked out, but I didn't black out because I remember everything turning white again. It was more of a white out.
Wow.
And I totally lost consciousness. And when I had woke up, I was in excruciating pain in my lower left area. And I did have to go to the hospital and have it checked out. And I had a big hernia. I had tore through the abdominal muscles.
Oh, my goodness.
It ripped them open when I was fighting, and I really was fighting for my life. And they asked me what happened, and all I could tell the doctor was that I'd had a nightmare, because I wasn't prepared to tell them what I believed my truth to be.
Right. Wow.
And so I felt that was a very negative experience to be my, what I would consider my first face-to-face, with the gray extraterrestrial. I'd seen other things in my earlier youth, but nothing that made me scared.
So that's a good point as well. Why is it you think some people have very negative interaction with alien beings while others report having really positive?
I think some people are more easily manipulated than others, to be honest with you. I'm going to just tell you that. I do think that some people become more compliant. Some people maybe think they are dreaming. You have to from where I'm sitting, it looks like the extraterrestrials are far superior as far as technology goes. And I think that they have the ability to manipulate our brainwaves. I think that just like a hypnotherapist counting down her subject is manipulating their brainwaves and altering their conscious states and taking their brain out of beta and moving it in between alpha and theta so that we're opening the subconscious mind. If I can do that,
right,
I certainly believe that they can do that, and so that they can manipulate people. But there are those people who refuse, and I got scared, and I'm glad, and because that made me even more conscious and aware. And so it was a very negative experience, but I will say, not telling you the whole complete story, there was more to it, but prior to me becoming 100% lucid, to the right of me, to the right side of me, I did hear my name being called out. And when I turned my attention towards that area, saw sort of the silhouette of 3 entities. They spoke extremely fast and high-pitched, and they were vibrated in the shades of violet, as if a fluorescent violet.
Oh, wow.
And they told me to focus and control. And that really did allow me to control my mind, to understand the situation that I'd had myself in.
Okay. So while this was happening, there were the 3 grays in front of you, and then also these sort of violet figures with you as well. So do you think those were like guardian angels or some kind of...
I spent over 2 years seriously trying to figure out what they are. I mean, it's not the first interference they ran for me. And they actually, when I said earlier that I had a very profound spiritual experience, it did involve these same entities. And I don't know what they are. Don't know if they're angelic or if they're etheric or celestial. I only know that in their presence, I feel nothing but full acceptance and pure, unconditional love. And I know that there is still a bit of a communication barrier, because when I do and can speak with them, there are mistakes like misinterpretation of simple words. At one point, they had told me I had passed, and I thought that I had died, and thought that what I was experiencing was a near-death experience, but in fact, it was just a very fantastic out-of-body experience.
Wow.
And passing at all had nothing to do with death. And so there was that, there's always that little bit of amusement.
Wow. Communication. It's always about communication. So let's talk about Edgar Mitchell Foundation for a moment. Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. Now, Edgar Mitchell was an Apollo 14 astronaut, and he co-founded FREE, the foundation. And you are an interviewer for the foundation now. You just recently became a researcher for their scientific board. So tell us more about that exciting development and what FREE actually does and all that good stuff.
Well, FREE, like you said, is the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And the board members are made up of an interdisciplinary plethora of scientists from all aspects of the scientific community, from social scientists such as sociologists and psychologists to physicists like Dr. Rudy Shield, other doctors like Dr. Edgar Mitchell himself, several other Apollo astronauts. And the one commonality that all of these highly educated, extremely reputable people share, and everybody who has anything to do with the association, is we all share one thing, in that we are experiencers.
Wow.
Everybody.
Fascinating. Now, the scientific board that you sit on, and you have these physicists, you have the astronauts, you have different scientists, you have physicians. So the very goal of what you're doing is to research.
Share and research information. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm new to that, and I haven't got to sit on any board yet with the scientific aspect. I have had 2 recent meetings with Ray Hernandez and others, and other branch of free is creating the support groups and bringing that attention globally to the issue of extraterrestrial presence and interaction with humanity, bringing that to light, giving people opportunities to come forward and be free, speak freely. And with that, the information, when it's given, from a point where they're not hysterical any longer, and they are more personally empowered, have a larger understanding, we can see that it's very clear that surely there is extraterrestrial existence and presence. And when we begin to understand physics and astrophysics and how life is created, we can see that there is life everywhere that we look. It's only natural. I mean, it's my understanding that the planet Earth is a garden planet in a series of garden planets, and that we are, in fact, a very integral part of our universe. So we don't just float out here in space. We do that in conjunction with our sun and moon and the other planets in our solar system. It's very interactive all the way through. There are different densities and gases and life in almost every aspect. And so other sentient beings, by all means. And I say it, I wish we could prove it more readily, although NASA, no, I'm sorry, not NASA, I believe one of the Ivy League schools just came forward stating that most likely there is extraterrestrial life, and it's going to be found in our own solar system or universe. It's going to be found in the red dwarf star systems. And so for that, it's outside of our ability to see, outside of our natural spectrum, but not outside of our technology. So if we were to look up into the sky and see a star, there's 3 or 4 planets and stars around that we don't see, and those are called the red dwarf star systems, and they move at a different frequency outside of our vision. They have like a longer wave than we have, so they're moving, but it's all science and math. The whole phenomena really is anyway. I mean, us here in the third dimension, we know what's going on. We know our time is fixed. We can't go into the past. The past is already gone. We can't go to the future. We can only project it. We can go to the past only in the mind. The mind itself must be able to move into other dimensions. I personally believe that our consciousness, our essence, our soul resides both inside of us and outside of us. And that gives us the ability to move out of our body, having out-of-body experiences, and therefore moving into greater depths of space.
Right, exactly.
There are no limits.
Now, one of the other really interesting aha moments I had was when I talk a lot about near-death experiences. I've had several near-death experiences of my own, and I give a lot of workshops and speaking engagements around this concept. I talk a lot about how post-NDE or near-death experience, there has been marked increase in ESP phenomenon. So psychic ability, clairvoyant skills, being able to see apparitions, lucid dreaming, that sort of thing. And there have been actual, in peer-reviewed journals, there have been actual scientific studies who show beyond chance, marked increase in psychic phenomena in 6 different areas after someone has an NDE. Now, what I just learned about you and from you that I'd like you to share is that apparently there's an increase in ESP psychic phenomena post-alien abduction or extraterrestrial contact interaction. So share that with us.
That's absolutely correct. I believe it's a very high statistic, up about 86% of experiencers report an increase in their psychism, whether it's through intuition or any of the other senses. And it's because I think that when you are in contact with a different reality, your reality is challenged, and you accept this reality. Your consciousness, therefore, must expand into this new reality. And with that, a little bit higher vibration, channels are open, we're vibrating a little bit faster. And when we do that, we are moving into that gamma vibration. And that is where our inspiration and psychism resides.
Outstanding. And now, here's something that's been really interesting also is the ability to engage in telepathy. Now, I know in near-death experience, when that's actually occurring, telepathy is occurring with other beings. I also have experienced being able to engage in telepathy with other people, just, in physical form, but practicing, you're able to actually engage in telepathy, and also being able to connect with disembodied spirits while doing mediumship. That's a level of telepathy. So what is your experience around telepathy and your both personal experience and your professional experience in dealing with thousands of cases of abductees? How does telepathy come into the picture?
Well, most communication is described to me as being telepathic communication. So when an experiencer is communicating, they say that it's telepathic. Now, this would be abductees and other contactees. There are those who fall into a different category of interaction where they're willing to participate in some type of a relationship with an extraterrestrial, and they speak using their vocal cords like we do.
Wow.
And that the extraterrestrials do as well. They said that there are some that are very similar to us in biology. The tall whites were said to have learned English. These are the extraterrestrials that Charles Hall writes about, that lived in a barracks on one of the military bases and Indian Springs, I believe. And that, they can look like us. They look very close to us. There are some differences. Some people say they're more luminescent, that there's a bit of a glow to them, but they can cover that with clothing and so forth. So
now, how many? So speaking of whites, how many? So we have the grays. We have, I know, reptilians, whites. How many types of alien species are you aware of?
Well, I've heard of all types. When you look at the ancient aliens, they talk about the Anunnaki that came down. Now, there's supposed to be some descendants of them, which are called the Naga, and they went underwater, under the sea. And so they're kind of an aquatic extraterrestrial, but now they're submersed in the oceans. There's, yes, of course, the reptilians, and then hybrids of reptilians, the mantis beings, and the tall grays. And then there are some small blues that are described as looking kind of like a gnome, very awkward and squat like a gnome or dwarf. And they are blue. So there are many. And then there are the ones that, the Noetics, that look very much like a humanoid, just a tad taller, but fair-haired skin and eyes.
Fascinating.
So they can easily blend into our society. Of course, one of the more famous stories of the Noetics was Shirley MacLaine.
Right.
She said she was visiting Peru and was up high in the mountains at Lake Titicaca and had a face-to-face interaction with a Nordic being, and they told her that they were Nordic beings. And the interesting thing about that area, and I'm sure that's why she was there, is that the indigenous people from that region see UFOs moving in and out of the lake all the time, and they really don't think anything of it.
So there you go with the cultural aspect again, because right? Because to them, they're like, oh yeah, it happens all the time, no big deal. And
just like another bus.
Fascinating. So let's talk a little bit more about the different categories of contact experiencers, because You mentioned something earlier that caught my attention, which was there's a difference between an abduction and a contactee.
Right, for sure. An abduction is being taken against your will. And like a thief in the night, these extraterrestrials come and take people from their bedrooms or their homes or their cars on a, quiet, deserted road. Mm-hmm. And that is violating human rights on all levels. And then there are those who, I want to have an extraterrestrial experience. Abduct me, they say, which I think is really the wrong thing to do. Really watch what you ask for.
Exactly.
But then contactees, they receive information either receive somewhat like a download into their mind. Mm-hmm. And it comes rapid and fast, and they understand it, and it's clear. But later, there's sort of an emotional residual effect of the information. It's processed so quickly that it takes the body and the emotions to catch up to it a little bit. Download can be very shocking. And again, we have to ask, hey, does an extraterrestrial or any source have the right to download information into our heads without our expressed permission?
Right.
I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I mean, they can, I really don't believe that that's the way it's supposed to be done. And so they're part of the protocol in determining whether or not an entity of any level is safe is how they treat you. So we have to look at that. If they come to you and they call you by name right off the bat when they use your name, whenever anybody comes, and the first thing they say is they call me by name. That's always a clue to me. And I always really underline that in my notes because that keeps popping up in my research. So that when they're called by name, I can already see that they're going to be having a beautiful, altruistic, loving experience. And through that approach is a way of asking permission. And so you call them by name, you're addressed, and it's, when they do that, though, they kind of get the feeling they know you, they know your name.
Right. Well, and so yeah, I mean, that can kind of go either way, right? But I guess if a being were going to take the time to get to know my name and address me by name, then that's, in a way, it's a sign of respect, and it's acknowledging you as an individual and not just some number or a lab rat or whatever, right? So
right, and they gauge your response to that, okay? And then they'll ask questions. They ask questions. Are you afraid? Do you want to see? Do you want to come with us? And if you're saying yes, yes, and yes, then it's all good. But when one comes in and takes you and begins to perform an experiment or remove tissue. But that's not all they do. I mean, there are two totally separate types of physical abduction. There's a sexual aspect, and then there's the removing of genetics. But there's also this psychological testing that's done to many contactees that really pushes them to the limit, pushes them to the edge of reality and beyond. And they're really put in a situation of questioning, am I crazy? Is this real? Can it be true? Yeah. And we have to be fair here. All experiencers of any anomalous behavior, any type of paranormal or extraterrestrial behavior, they're going to react on one way or the other. I mean, they do need to be looked at from a compassionate point.
Yep.
And they're going to be adjusting their own personal belief systems. And with that, we can cause great anxiety and stress and perhaps even a nervous breakdown when somebody comes to the conclusion, oh my God, aliens are real.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't ever want to shock anybody's personal beliefs and push them too hard. We have to be very careful. And so when you see an entity behaving like that with us, to make sure that they're not creating some type of psychological scarring or harm, and that we are in fact able to communicate this way safely, then you proceed. But when there's a violation of your personal mind, body, and space, and you're never given a clear explanation as to why, I mean, I am very emotional on certain levels, and I can feel their fear when they tell me, and their heightened anxiety and their distorted belief because they're moved through a wall with an extraterrestrial, and hey, that's not the physics we learned in school.
Right. No, quite the contrary, actually.
Right. It can be very hard, and that's why I am a hypnotherapist that works in this field of anomalous happenings, so that people can get a little bit of guidance and personal empowerment.
I love that. It's so important because you're right. Whether it's a paranormal experience, whether it's a near-death experience, whether it's an alien contact experience, this alters someone's complete reality of what they believe to be true. And so there most certainly are going to be ramifications and repercussions for that. Speaking of
things like is God real? They ask that
Sure.
right away. Everything they've ever been taught now is up for question.
It's subject to scrutiny, absolutely. Now, and there's also something that you refer to as post-abduction syndrome. What are some of the signs and symptoms of that, and how do you help people work through that?
Well, it's all of the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. The clear difference is that often with an abductee, they don't remember all of the details of the experience, and it's fragmented and unclear, and they're not even sure what they believe. But somebody who's experiencing other regular post-traumatic stress disorder, it's very clear. Maybe their home burnt down, or they lost their job,
Sure.
or they were a victim in the housing scandal, or something like nature. So they can, or they were a war victim. You can put your finger on it easily. But when it's more anomalous behavior, it makes it a little bit more difficult because they don't really know why, they're freaking out on certain levels. And so, but when we see what their triggers are, and their triggers are, a poster of a gray alien, say, or any glimpse or talk of that phenomena, and they become reactive. They become often they get stuck on hyper alertness, and they have trouble sleeping. So we see very many of the same symptoms, and this post-abduction stress syndrome was coined by a psychiatric nurse by the name of Rose Harsgrove, and she did the work and put together this syndrome to make it easier for others to identify.
Okay.
We really are moving forward in the acceptance level and credibility of this. It's sad on one hand that it's taken so long because, it hasn't taken this long everywhere. Okay. This, like all aspects of it, is cultural. There are many countries who have no problem believing, and it is part of their belief system, the existence of extraterrestrials or jinn, demons or angels and ghosts. Of course, there's a spirit world. And you know what? There is a doctor by the name of Sam Perrotin, and he does studies on people who have had near-death experiences, and he worked with over 100 of them and who have died, and they have been brought back. Not all of them can remember their experience, but that's not the important part here. The science is the important part, and they're able to measure the leaving of an energy after the body is dead, and then that energy coming back. And so we're proving that there is a soul,
Absolutely.
consciousness.
That's right.
And when we accept that, okay, that we can live outside of our body and still have awareness, then we have to really begin to see the trifecta of our existence,
Yes.
in the body, and we're manifested in the third dimension, or that's where our attention is. When our attention is higher and we're in the more spirit form and we're out of body, we're living in that aspect. And there is a balancer in between, which is the mind, processing this, the mind and body. It's all very interesting how it works. But when we get a good idea of what and who we are, we really begin to see reality in the universe and consciousness from a different level. Being a human being has never meant more ever in history. Right now, hue is a word for the saturation of light, intensity of light, and man is for manifestation, and a human is a light embodiment. And when you know what you are, you can really lift some of those limitations of what you're supposed to be or act like. You don't have to go, I'm a woman or a mother or whatever. You don't have to identify yourself in those areas. When you understand your humanity, begin to see that you work at a much larger scale, and that the body itself is just an antenna interpreting our environment. That's
Absolutely.
all it is, feeding my consciousness as I'm having this 3D experience.
That's exactly right. Let's talk about past lives for a moment, Laurie, because this is something that I've been curious about as well. So, in relation to alien contacts, when we talk about past lives, there is a theory out there that people have had past lives on other planets, have been other beings, non-human beings on other planets. Do you think that may be a connection to someone having an alien encounter in this lifetime, that they have perhaps in a past life lived on another planet or been a non-human? So now there's sort of that silver cord, if you will, between that experience and this experience. I guess, what do you think about that? And do you think that lends a reason why some people have alien experiences while other people never do?
Well, because alien experiences are so varied and there's such a wide variety of witnesses, we're always getting a different perspective of it. But when we look at abduction in family and we see that it's generational and that they would abduct the same family member over and over, we go, well, why is that? Is it their DNA or their blood type? In fact, it's probably both, because we do see that abductees are most likely going to have a Rh negative blood type, and that is just the common facts of the statistics. So there's that. But then we also have been able to determine that gray extraterrestrials are roughly 100,000 years more advanced than us, and that they live to be about 900, 1,000 years old. And then they die much like we do. And there's much said that they don't have that essence, that consciousness, that eternal ability. That's why they're coming and abducting, trying to create a hybrid where they'll be able to take their gray being energy and mix it with ours so that they can live on eternally through our own soul and consciousness. But so there's that aspect of it. So can you be a family member of them? Perhaps you can, and there's some type of etheric filament energy attachment that would make them drawn to you based on the laws of likes attract likes. That's possible. Or maybe there's the ancestral blood memories running through their very veins.
Yeah, fascinating. In
their DNA, it said that there are like 22.2 subspecies of gray alien alone, and
wow.
we have 22.2 weird missing links in our DNA. I don't think that they ever really were missing. I think that they were always identified as extraterrestrial, and it was just something that people didn't want to talk about.
Right. So what do you have another hypothesis as to why some people never actually have an alien encounter, whereas other people tend to have multiple encounters?
Well, okay, there was the original deal with Dwight Eisenhower and the extraterrestrials that he supposedly had a contract with, that he had said that they could abduct 250,000 GIs, generally enlisted military boys and girls. And the reason that they told them, we'll just abduct these ones because they showed a great interest in our species, was so that they could dual track them, so that they would know which ones are being abducted, and they'll be able to track them from their whole lives, because once you're in the military, you're always going to get some type of check or benefit, and they always know where you are, okay? So they can dual track you quite easily. And so there's those abductions, because those were the original ones. But then there are others that have a strong DNA that might make it easier for the alignment that's trying to create the hybridization program, which is, they say, to infiltrate our human race. They want to use their super intelligence in our conscious mind and be embodied. It's very difficult, it's very complicated, and it's hard for us to say, but I think that any of the extraterrestrials that are doing the abduction might not be extraterrestrials at all, and that in fact there's a possibility that they could be demonic or jinn. They're just races of entities that vibrate at a different level.
Right.
They're very intelligent. Doesn't mean they don't use technology, so we have to look at it from that perspective, so that we can understand their psychology.
Absolutely.
And, without giving them our power.
Right. Oh, that's key. That's absolutely key. So I really love that answer, because you're saying that it's possible that it can be some other type of being. And that's what we're still trying to find out. That's why we're doing all these studies. That's why we have all these organizations. That's why we're collecting data. We're trying to find the truth behind what's really happening.
Right. I mean, and what it looks like is what everybody is saying. And is it that? We can't say definitively. We just simply can't. Even I've had my experience. I've had, luckily, got to counter them with very beautiful ones too, and only had a limited negative one. But at least it, in my mind, it allowed me to see the existence of this type of being. And extraterrestrials are known to lie. And I got to tell you, in my business, and especially in the last year, I get people coming in suffering from a multitude of different types of stress. Some chemtrails are freaking them out. They don't think they're natural. There's nothing they can do about it. So what do they do? Right? And I get these people moving through their own transitional phase of awakening. They're learning a different type of reality. And I get these people who believe that they have some type of attachment, and it's an entity attachment, and that it's a negative one. And they think that they're having conversations with an extraterrestrial, and they're coming to me saying, oh yeah, I'm a contactee, and I talk to this ET all the time. And I'm like, you talk to this ET all the time? Well, who is this extraterrestrial? And they'll give me a name like Jacob. I'm like, really?
Oh, interesting.
Jacob. Come on now. So it really isn't an extraterrestrial at all. And we can usually find out that it's some type of other entity who is just manipulating the human.
That's fantastic, because, I mean, that to me, if I heard that, my immediate, where I would go immediately is, oh, that's a disembodied spirit. That's someone who's lived in human form, they're deceased, and they're contacting you for some reason or another.
Yeah, but, they're not going to stay with you all the time,
right,
talking to you just as clearly as we hear each other. And that's how they express it. Sometimes there's different accents, and male or female voices, and they're as clear as you and I speaking right now. And so I don't go to the spirit world initially. I think radionics or psychotronics, that there's some type of wave being penetrated, and that there's some type of a psychological mind control experiment, perhaps. Or, I just have to put them all out there and look at it, because so many of these situations have turned out to be one or the other. And I'm not even really shocked anymore. I'm disappointed a lot, to be honest, but I'm not shocked at, I've had people come to me that believe that they're targeted individuals of some type of, electromagnetic warfare, and they're truly suffering.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are truly suffering. I'll just tell you quickly, I had one quite older man, and he said his life is just ruined. He's always hearing these clicking and knocking sounds in his house, and he gets these weird vibrations in his feet, and it really hurts, and sometimes it hurts his spine. And he's gone to every doctor, and he's seeing a psychologist, and he told he convinced the doctor to come to his house and hear for himself. And if he didn't hear them, that he was going to take whatever, drugs they were going to prescribe.
Wow.
So the doctor came to his house, and sure enough, he heard what the man had described. And then it started happening in the doctor's office, and the doctor
goodness.
To move. And so for some reason, this man is some type of a targeted individual.
Wow.
And then there's also the people who believe, like Melinda Leslie and many others, that they have military laboratory abductions, MyLab abductions, where they are an abductee, and that after that, they're abducted then by some branch of what's supposed to be the United States government, and they're brain drained again, trying to find out everything that happened to them so that they can gather their information and insight on the extraterrestrials.
Wow. Now, Laurie, you have a book that is coming out this year, I believe, Extraterrestrial Interference.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's a combination of firsthand experiences at mine, my mother's, and then one of my grandmother's. And it's mixed with all of the research. So it will have the statistics and the indicators of abduction, protocol, different categories of abduction, and then cases like true hypnotherapy, case studies of extraterrestrial abduction. So it's got quite a bit in it. It's pretty thick. It's sitting here right beside me. I printed it out off the computer because I had told my husband something being hacked, something's happening, and I think my computer's going to crash. And sure enough.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you saved the transcript, the manuscript. So
yeah, we have everything.
Excellent. And so that'll be out this year. Now,
yes.
For people who have really resonated with your message tonight, they'd like to hear more from you, or perhaps they would even like to be able to join your Sacramento Alien Abduction and Contactee support group, or come to you for a hypnotherapy session, or find out more about some experiences or alien contact that they're going through. They might want to reach out to you about that. How do people find you?
Really, the best way to find me is to just go directly to my website, truehypnotherapy.com, and everything is on there. Events, upcoming workshops, or speaking engagements. It's a little bit behind, actually, on the upcoming speaking engagements. Okay. But
I know what that's like, believe me.
I am not a webmaster.
I hear you.
It's a lot of work, but you can always get a hold of me directly through my website.
Fantastic. So I just want to thank you again, Laurie, for being with us this evening and sharing fascinating experiences and information with us about what's going on in the alien abductee and extraterrestrial contact world. And I would like to invite you back in the future, because I think we just scratched the surface here. I'd like to really dive down into some actual experiences and talk about what people are going through.
I would love to come back. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I just really thank you for being here. It was a real pleasure.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Transpersonal Radio listeners, I want to make sure that you go to Laurie's website. I will put that in the show notes on the Transpersonal Radio website. So you'll be able to find her, Laurie McDonald of True You Hypnotherapy. was our guest this evening, and she is just going about her business. She's got so many things going on. She has a support group up there, so if you have had contactee experience or you've had an alien abduction experience and you'd like to join her support group, she is in Sacramento in Northern California. She is also available for hypnotherapy sessions. If you feel that you have had an experience that you need help with, she is available for that. And she is also doing work with the not new, it's been around for a while, but she's new, doing work with the the Foundation for Extraterrestrial research. So make sure you find out more about that by going to her website, which I will connect from Transpersonal Radio. So again, as always, until next week, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Transpersonal Radio.
If you'd like to suggest a future
topic
or be a guest, visit transpersonalradio.com. Call the hotline at 619-800-6057
or
like our page, facebook.com/
Transpersonal Radio.